Welcome to the channel, it's Blank Arts 3D, and in today's video I will be showing you how I printed, processed, and painted the Kingdom Hearts Keyblade. So without further ado, let's get right into it. For this print, I'm using my Creality Ender 3 Pro, and I'm using regular PLA filament. Now, as far as where I got the print, I went on Thingiverse and found this Kingdom Hearts model by Kuga. Download all the files. Once you've downloaded all the files, I took it to Ultimaker Kira, and then here is how I oriented them. And you're gonna need these parts as well. You're gonna need to print these twice because it's front and back. You kind of need to close it off. As well as this one, you're gonna need to print it twice as well. Finally, this one, as for the blade portion. And these cylinders right here, they're not part of the files that you can download. So what I did was I went on Tinkercad and created my own cylinder supports. And I just made it 20 by 20 so that it will fit just fine after it prints. And it's supposed to go in these holes right here so that you have support in the middle so that the print just doesn't fall apart. And I'll show you how to orient that later. You can find this on Thingiverse, the chain link that you will need later for the Mickey Mouse portion on the handle. So just go on Thingiverse and look for chain link print, and then print that out. Okay, so now that we've got all the parts printed, it's time to take off these supports with the pliers, and then we'll start putting them together. Okay, so now that we got the little adhesions out, it's time to start putting them together. I'm going to start with these two bottom pieces, and they're going to be pretty much opposite each other. It's built so that all the other pieces fit in the empty parts. So we're just going to line the middle circle as best as we can and try to get it as flat as you can on both sides. Try to flatten it out, and once you get that, you're just going to get the soldering iron and then try to melt both pieces together without making the marks a little too deep. Okay, once you got that part melted, it should be enough to kind of hold both parts. We'll reinforce it later, and then we'll fix any imperfections later as well after we do the rest of the pieces. Okay, so now you can start on either side, and it's gonna be this one, just matching it like this, and then same thing, just weld it together. Make sure that you take off any of the pieces so that it fits properly, so there's no gaps when you kind of weld it together. Alright, once you got both sides welded on, now it's time for the side pieces. Which are these ones, and same thing, you're just gonna go weld it here and on the other side. Okay, once you got both the side pieces on, now it's time for the final two pieces of this part of the handle. So it's gonna go together like this, kind of like the bottom, and then it's gonna connect to the top part, and same thing, we're just gonna weld it. Now that we've got this whole part of the handle put together, you might notice that there are some gaps that need to be filled in. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take some extra filament, and we are going to use the soldering iron to melt the parts over where it needs to be melted. And I'm going to do this for all the areas where I welded together, just so it's smooth and all flattened out. Try to make it as flat as possible, and then later we can refine it with sanding. Now that we've gone over all the parts that we've welded, I am going to smoothen it out a little bit, just a little bit, with 120 grit. Okay, so now that I've got Bondo on all the parts that I've welded, I'm gonna let this dry, and while this is drying, I am going to be working on these pieces and putting them together. It's pretty simple. 3 of these pieces, including the Keyblade tip, and we're just gonna use the same method with the welding to have them stick together. Okay, now this piece is right here. It's gonna fit on the top right here where it's kind of flat, so it forms the whole rounded edge of the Keyblade. And then same thing, just weld it together. Okay, so the blade part is put together. So the next thing that we need to do is let the Bondo dry, like what we did with the handle. And then we're gonna come back to the handle, and the Bondo should already be dry by now. And we're gonna, I'm gonna sand it with the 240, and then once I've sanded all of it with the 240, then I will sand it with the 320 for the final smoothness. Once you do that, you may notice there are some parts that are still not smooth. All you need to do is just go over it with another layer of Bondo, and then just re-sand it once it dries with the 240 again. And then once that's done, I'm waiting for it to dry. I'm gonna work on this with the 240. Okay, once you've got both this part of the handle and the key sanded to 320 or however smooth you want it to be, now it's time to start putting things together. Before we put it together, we're gonna just do some minor fixes and touch-ups to other pieces. I'm gonna start with this piece. This piece goes on top right here, which will then have the blade or the key part go on top like that. I'm gonna sand it so that this is smooth, and then we'll start gluing it together and welding. Okay, once you have that all ready and sanded, let's start assembling. So like I said, this piece is gonna go on top here. I'm just gonna use some of the super glue to get it situated on top. Then I'm gonna weld the sides just a little bit, not too much, so that way it retains its circular shape. Okay, once that part is done, we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna put it on top of the handle. It's gonna go on kind of like upside down. So this part right here, this flat part will go slide into this. We'll slide in just like this. So we're gonna put these two together first. Okay, we'll let that dry up and harden. And while that's drying up and hardening, we're gonna take these two pieces and we're just gonna glue them together as well. Okay, so now that you've got that, so the handle, so now that this is dry, this whole thing should be able to just slip in straight through this piece right here. So just kind of slide it in. Align the holes as best as you can because we are putting the supports through the holes. Okay, once it's through, before I weld it in place, I'm just gonna make sure that the support goes all the way through and that it's not misaligned. Okay, perfect. When you're putting the support in, try to put some super glue to the bottom so that way when you turn the Keyblade upside down and you've already put everything together, it's not just flopping around inside making an annoying noise. Okay, so now I'm just gonna weld the handle to make sure that it doesn't slip out. Okay, now that we've got the handle situated, let's take the other support, put some glue on it, and put it on top and secure it so that we can put the Keyblade on. To keep the blade from rotating, I'm going to secure it a little bit by slightly welding together this part without making too deep of holes. Make sure that it's kind of aligned. Okay, while I'm waiting for the super glue to settle on the Keyblade and the supports, I'm going to work on the other parts. And all those parts are, we have this part right here that attaches to the bottom. We have the chain, we have the Mickey Mouse head, and then we have this part that attaches to the bottom of the Keyblade. And then we have this part right here that is supposed to go on this. One thing I recommend is for this part, print this part like 2% smaller so that way it'll fit a lot easier in here. I didn't print it 2% smaller, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this to kind of sand it down and make it smoother so that it will fit in here. Okay, now coming back to the actual Keyblade itself, we're gonna further secure the key head. So turn it upside down, and what I'm gonna do is just get some filament and this area right here where it's kind of weak, but now we're gonna further secure it by, using the soldering iron and going around it by putting more plastic to secure both pieces together. Okay, now once you've got that and it's all dried, you can smooth it out a little bit by sanding. Okay, and once you got that, that's pretty much it. This is the blade. Next thing is to start coloring, and before we color, I'm gonna prime it first. And what I use to prime it is this Rust-Oleum filler primer. Okay, once you get this piece to fit, don't secure it just yet. Okay, make sure it still can come out. We're gonna paint it with this inside though, but I'm not gonna secure it yet because there's other parts that need to go in it. So now we're gonna work on the Mickey Mouse head, and just grab any piece of filament and then kind of cut it roughly about 2 inches in length. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of bend it a little, just like that. And the goal is there are holes on top of here, and we're gonna try to just put it through. Okay, and that's what it should look like once you got it through. Once you got that through, you're gonna take the chain link, just slide it in, and then now all that's left to do is to close this together by using a soldering iron and then just melting both pieces together. Okay, once you got that, you can kind of smooth it out without kind of tearing it open with the smaller sander. And there it is. So it should be able to just kind of hang like this now. and we're gonna paint it all later, so it doesn't matter what color you use right now. Okay, so now we're gonna take this and we're gonna do pretty much the same thing. There's a hole right here that we're gonna do the same, cut another filament and kind of put it through. Okay, so here, and same thing, put the chain through and then close it up. Okay, bam, and here is the piece put together. The reason why we don't want this closed is because this is gonna go through here, then it's gonna go through here, and then that's when we would seal it off. Okay, so these two pieces, we're all gonna prime this first, but these two pieces are gonna be gold, and then all of this is going to be chrome or metallic silver. Okay, and what I'm using for the gold is this Rust-Oleum metallic finish, and for the silver I'm using this metallic finish Rust-Oleum as well. For the black, I'm using this Fusion all-in-one Krylon gloss black paint. For the blue, I'm using this Rust-Oleum metallic blue colored. What we have so far has been dried, so now we can start coloring the other parts. The reason why I colored this, the handle and this part and the top part of the blade first is because they're parts that are super easy to tape off once they're dry, and then that way I can just go over the gold parts and finish off the silver part, tape them off. Okay, now that that's all taped up, literally all that's left to do is color this whole part gold and then fix up this silver part. We also have these two pieces. Just take this off carefully, make sure it doesn't break. We wanted to paint them. It's easier to paint them when they're separate. That's it, that completes this part. You're gonna kind of glue it down at the bottom when this is done being painted. Glue it down at the bottom. Super glue should work just fine because this is a pretty light part, so you don't need to do any welding or melting it together. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside and let the super glue dry. Once you remove the tape, this is the product. Now it's all painted. The only thing left to do is to attach this part to the bottom. Just super glue is enough, like I said, because this is very light, so hold it in place for a bit. Once it's dried, that's pretty much all there is. That is how you make the Keyblade. And there it is, the finished product for the Keyblade. Why make one when you can make two? So, if you want to make the Kingdom Hearts Key D, it's the same exact print and build, you just have to flip the colors around. The only major difference is the red instead of the blue. Everything else is the same. You can just get any red spray paint that would work for you and just paint that part red. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to my channel to follow along for more creations. Comment down below what you thought of this project, and also comment what you want to see me make next. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you just want to come and hang out. And if you decide to make this yourself, go ahead and tag me on Instagram so I can see how it turned out for you. If you don't want to make this and you just want one for yourself, you can also check out my Etsy shop. Most of the things that I print will be on my Etsy shop. Again, thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next print.